Okay, hi everyone. Thank you all very much for coming. It's 7 o'clock, so we're going to make a start. So tonight's session is going to be all about Taxfiler once again. Only the different thing is with this session is that we're going to run through how to create a limited company client. And we're going to do a bit of a walkthrough on limited company accounts and a limited company tax return. So that's how this evening is going to pan out. We're getting a few more coming along now, which is brilliant. So that's really good. So usual things that I usually say before we start, which is if you've got your little microphone symbol on the GoToMeeting control panel, if you could just do me a favor and just make sure that's on mute. Again, it's usual stuff. It's not because I don't want to hear anyone. It's simply because it keeps the sort of background noise down to a minimum. So if that's okay, I will keep a check on it. Hopefully it'll be on mute okay, but if it does accidentally turn on to unmute, if you could mute it again, that would be great, just to keep the background noise down for everyone else really. Okay, and as usual, if you have any questions throughout the session, if you need any clarification on what I'm doing, or you didn't understand what I did, or any questions at all really, then do type them into the chat box. As usual, because I'll be concentrating on the screen so much, I may not see it immediately, but I will try and get to it either during the session or at the very end. And if I don't get to it, as always, I will answer any questions on the Facebook group. And as I say, this session is being recorded, so this will be uploaded hopefully in the morning. So for those people that haven't managed to make it, or if you want to see it again, then there's perfect opportunity to do that once it's uploaded sometime tomorrow morning. Okay, so what I am going to do tonight is I'm not going to go into a huge amount of detail about Taxfiler itself. Reason being, I did that in the last Taxfiler session, and that is now uploaded on the YouTube channel. So it's a bit pointless me going through exactly the same stuff as I did on that one, because you guys can all watch it whenever you want to. So I'm not going to go into too much detail about setting up Taxfiler itself. Rather, what I'm going to do is set up a limited company client, which is something I haven't done before. And we're going to type in a trial balance, which I've got in front of me. So I'm going to put that into the software. And then I'm going to show you how Taxfiler generates a set of limited company accounts and a CT600 company tax return. All being well, technology should work. It should all go smoothly. I'm hoping it will. But if we've got any issues along the way, I'm sure we can deal with them. Okay, so we've got the Taxfiler home screen here, as you can hopefully all see. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to click on clients. So I'm going to go into the client screen there. Now this is the sort of demonstration version of a Taxfiler, so we've got lots of dummy companies all set up there. But as I say, we're going to do one completely from scratch. So I'm going to click on create new client. And we're then faced with this screen here. So the client type, this is what we need to get right. So for this purpose, we're going to choose company. So we're going to a limited company. And we've got two fields with red asterisks here. Now, as I mentioned before, when we were working on a sole trader, Taxfiler does need these two fields completed in order to accept it. If one or both of these two fields aren't completed, Taxfiler won't be able to create the record. So client code, we're just going to put, I'm going to call this Fred Blogs Limited. So let me put FB001 for now. And we'll say Fred Blogs Limited. Now, you'll see here, there's a little, if you can see it there, it's a little bit faint, but there's a little box there that says look up company number. Now, once we can put the number of our company that we're working on, and if we then click on look up company number, it will actually find all the details from company's house. Because it's a cloud-based package, it will pick up all the details from company's house, and it will pre-populate mostly the address field. But it's quite handy if that saves you sort of typing it in again. But the reason it's faint is because I hadn't started typing in. So now, as soon as I've started typing, you see that comes up in bold. So if I was typing a real company number here, you could type it in, click on look up company number, and it will fill the name in and the address details. So that's really, really handy as well. But we're now going to just put a dummy company in. So I'm going to say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Hopefully we'll accept that. And as I mentioned before, when we were setting up the sole trader, although we don't need anything in the UTR field for Taxfiler to accept it as a record, We do need something in the UTR field if we're obviously going to file company tax returns. There has to be something in there, or else Taxfiler won't file anything. So I'm going to say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm hoping that accepts that. So I will put an address in. I'm just going to make up an address now, and I'll put that in just so we've got an address on the corporation tax return when we come to generate it in a while. So I'm going to say 79 Lodge Road. I'm completely making this up. Sorry if it's any of your addresses, but it's totally off the top of my head. I'll say Newtown, Hants. Oh, not Hats, Hants. We'll say PO12FS. Completely and utterly made up, honestly. Right, okay, so I think that's all we need for now. We don't need any of the sort of home telephone, mobile, email address, etc., to get going with this. And as I mentioned before, you have got the responsibility fields at the bottom, which is quite handy if you've got a larger practice and you want to track partners, managers and staff, etc., etc., etc. But for now, for our purposes, I think we're going to accept that. So I'm hoping, fingers crossed, when I click on create, it will accept all that. And it has. Excellent. That's a good start. Right. So the first thing we need to do is we need to create a set of accounts. So we've set our client up. We've got Fred Blogs Limited. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to put some figures in. So we're going to click on the accounts tab here, and we're going to say new set of accounts. Now we're going to put the start and the, well, if we put the start of the period in, Taxfiler will automatically generate the end of period, as you'll see in a second. So I'm just going to use the sort of normal March year end. So if I say 010415, it automatically puts 31/3/16 in there. Now, type of accounts, we can choose various options. For now, I'm going to keep it as the default one, which is this one here, the small company one. You can, of course, do micro-entity accounts on here as well. For now, I'll keep it as that one. And the comparative period, I'm going to leave blank for the moment. Now, usually when you're doing a set of limited company accounts, Taxfiler very cleverly works out the previous year in order for you to be able to put that into the trial balance. But I've not really got time to type two lots of figures into the trial balance tonight. So for demonstration purposes, I'm just going to look at the current year, just look at the 1 year. So I'm going to take out these comparative periods. You'll see there it says leave blank if no comparative period. So that's exactly what I'm going to do. So I'm going to leave those blank. So we're just going to work on the 15-16 year for this demonstration. Okay, so we've got our dates, we've selected our accounts, and we're going to say create. Okay, so we've now got the tabs in order to be able to generate our accounts now. So the first tab we've got is details, which is basically what I've just typed in. So we've got the dates, we've got the company number, where the company was incorporated, which obviously we can change that as well. We've got the registered office address, which I put in. At the bottom here, we've got company is trading, so that's ticked. That can obviously not be ticked, so we can leave that as ticked. Or company is dormant, so obviously you can file dormant accounts with Taxfiler as well. This company that I'm using in the example is going to be trading, so we're going to leave that as it is. Now we've got directors during the period. Now, normally I would type in the name of the director here, but I'm not going to type anything in there purposely. I'm going to leave that blank, and I'll show you why a bit later on. Okay, so we're happy with this screen. This has basically picked up all the details we've used previously. So we're now going to click on trial balance. Okay. Now, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to type in, it's a little bit laborious, it's going to take me a couple of minutes. I've got a few figures here, but I want it to be sort of fairly realistic. So I've got a sort of set of figures that I'm going to type in. And I've got some profit and loss and some balance sheet figures. I need to type them all in so that it does balance and I can show you a fully balanced trial balance and a fully balanced set of accounts. So I'm going to start typing these figures in now. Remembering here from our training for our debits and credits, there we go, enter credits as negative amounts, enter debits as positive amounts. So we need to remember that, otherwise the TB won't balance. So sales, as we all know, is a credit balance. So I'm going to type in 33,760 for sales, using a minus because it's a credit balance. So we're going to move down slowly through the expenses now. So I'm going to purchases 1886. Okay, and I'm going to put some other direct costs in of 102. Now you'll notice as we move down, the trial balance summary is automatically completed, and there will be a red box here which says there are errors in the trial balance at the moment because the TB doesn't balance. So until these figures balance perfectly, then this red box is going to show. So we need to move down and carry on with the figures. So I'm going to find travel and subsistence, and I'm going to put 5817 in there. So these are completely random figures that I drew up earlier, and I did make sure my TB balanced, so we should be okay. I put software of 133. Depreciation. Now this is a good point to mention here. One thing that is often overlooked, believe it or not, and a set of limited company accounts is depreciation. There will nearly always be depreciation carried forward, and it's quite easy. It's quite an easy thing to do to prepare a set of company accounts and overlook depreciation. Because even if you overlook depreciation, the figures will still balance from obviously last year's fixed assets. So what I'm trying to say is you don't need to enter the current year's depreciation to make the figures balance. So you do have to remember that when you're doing a set of limited company accounts, you must enter the depreciation charge for the year. So this is obviously the profit and loss part of the account. So in depreciation, it's previously calculated this figure. We're going to put 487 in there. And I've got a sundry expenses, which is there. So we're going to say 54 in there. And we've got an accountancy figure, which is there. And that's another thing to say, just while I'm sort of typing these figures in. Accountancy fees. Again, this is something that's quite often overlooked when preparing company accounts. Now, what's standard practice? If you're let's say, billing your client at the end of the year, sending them an invoice at the end of the year after you prepare their accounts, then you do need to accrue that accountancy fee in the accounts. So you need to have that charge because it relates to this year end. So if we're charging Fred Bloggs Limited for the 31/3/16 accounts, obviously by the time we add by the time we prepare the accounts, we prepare the TB, we probably won't have sent the bill because sometimes we don't send the bill until we've completed the job. But we still need to accrue the accountancy fees in the profit and loss. So I'm going to put 661 in there, completely random figure. And okay, so we've got interest received. So I'm going to put that in other operating income. So interest received, oh no I'm not, because I'm going to choose interest receivable. Did I notice that? Interest receivable, so that's going to be a credit balance, so that's going to start with a minus. It's only 1, but we're going to put that in there because we've received that interest in the bank account. And another thing here, a really, really important thing to stress. Again, I still see this today, accountants missing this off, and that is the corporation tax charge for the year. Now, once you've prepared your set of limited company accounts, once you've got your final TB, you're going to need to work out how much corporation tax the client needs to pay because you need to enter that into the accounts. So it's almost an exercise that you do after you've completed the accounts. You're not going to know what the corporation tax charge is until you've totally finished the accounts and worked it out. But at that point, you are going to need to enter it into these accounts because the corporation tax charge for 31/3/16 year has to go in the accounts. And as I say, I still see it even now that a lot of accountants do miss out the corporation tax charge for the year. It's really, really important that we have that in there because it's an expense. It's an expense of the business and it's a liability on the balance sheet as well, which we'll come to in a minute. So we've got a special section here right at the end, corporation tax. So I'm going to put in there 4902. Okay, and I'm going to tick that. So that's basically, so you'll see the top half of these figures, they're sort of blue or purple depending on what colour you think that is, possibly purple. All the purple figures are profit and loss items, so all these are going to go at the sort of top half of the trial balance, and they're all going to go in the profit and loss section of the balance sheet. Now the bottom half we've got red, which is all the balance sheet figures. So we've got the P&L in purple or blue, and we've got the balance sheet in red. So hopefully all the P&L figures I've typed in now, they will all balance eventually. So what I'm going to do now is start to quickly fill in the balance sheet. There's not a lot to fill in here, but I do need to fill it in, obviously, otherwise the TB is not going to balance. So I've got fixtures and fittings. So first of all, we've got the fixed assets on the balance sheet, as you'll see. Now it's very important, again here, that we get these columns right. Now, cost brought forward, we're going to have to enter. So for fixtures and fittings brought forward, I've got 1349. Obviously, if you had comparative figures here, comparative figures in these columns here, it would be quite easy to work out what these figures were. As for this example, I haven't, but it is critical you get the right figures in the right columns here. So any fixed assets we've bought in this accounting year here are going to go in additions. So we've got the brought forward figure from last year, and we've got the additions for this year, which in my example is 599. So we're going to put that in additions. And similarly, we've got depreciation brought forward. Again, this is the figure brought forward from last year's accounts. Again, if it's in these columns here, it's going to be easy enough to bring forward. But in this case, we need to bring it forward, and it's a credit balance. So we start with a minus of 337. And we've got a charge for the year, which is going to be slightly higher because we've got some additions. So the charge for the year, again, it's a credit balance. So we say minus 487. I'm going to tick those two. I've seen your question, Katie. Thank you for that. I will come back to you later on that, if that's okay. I'm just going to press on with this now before I lose my thread, but I will come back to you later on. Okay, so we've got two credit balances there, depreciation and the charge for the year. So we're going to move on back down through the balance sheet. So that's all the fixed assets. We've then got the current assets, so it's in entirely logical order. So I've got debtors on my trial balance here. So I'm going to put debtors in there of 978. Then I've got some cash at the bank, which is there. So again, another point to mention, if you've got cash in your bank account, if there's at least £1 in there, then it's going to be a debit balance, and it's going to go in this column, cash at bank and in hand. If you've got a bank overdraft, if your bank balance is a minus, then it's going to go as a minus in the overdrafts column. So again, I've seen that in accounts as well. And sometimes in accounts you'll have a sort of a plus balance to bring forward, but a minus balance for the current year. So they go in two different columns. So it's quite important to remember the cash at bank, if it's a positive balance, it goes in there as a plus. If it's a negative balance, it will go in there as a minus. In this example, it's a plus, and it's 5802. So we're going to put that in there. So now we've got some credit balances to put in. So here's our creditors. So I've got a trade creditor here of 600. I'm going to put that in there. That could well be the accountancy accrual, actually. So that goes in there like that as a minus because it's a credit balance. And then the next thing to remember, that's a complete red herring. I hope you spotted my deliberate mistake there that I put it in the comparative column. Thank you very much, Katie. That's well spotted. I'm glad you picked that up. You get an extra mark for picking that up. Well done. So it goes in there, minus 600. And all right, okay, another thing, there's the other side of our corporation tax. So if you remember, we've gone and put the corporation tax figure in the P&L part of the trial balance. So there's our corporation tax charge of 4902. So we need to also put that as a creditor as well. So we've got a column especially for corporation tax. So we need to show that as owing, because basically it is effectively owing to HMRC for this year. So we need to accrue for that as well. So it's a credit balance, so we're going to put minus in there, and it's obviously the same figures we put in earlier, which is 4902. Okay. So then we've got directors, owed to directors. I've got a little figure here. So we've got a director's loan column especially for that. So I'm going to go in there and I'm going to say minus 763. That's owed to directors. Now, another thing here, again, funnily enough, I had this the other day. An accountant colleague of mine sent me some accounts to have a look through, and she'd missed off this figure. And it's very easy to miss off, because normally this figure that goes in here is only £1, but share capital, it's very important to make sure you do have it in the company accounts. But it's something that is still, even today, very, very often missed. So it's vital that you've got that in there, otherwise the accounts aren't going to be true and correct. So as it happens for this company, it's £1 share capital, but we still need it in. And I also get asked, is share capital a plus or a minus? It's always a minus. So it's a -1 in this case. So we're going to put that in there. And we're getting near to the end now, so I'm hoping this is going to balance in a second. If it's not, I'm going to look silly. So we've got profit and loss account here. So the profit and loss account, there's always going to be a balance carried forward from the profit and loss account for last year. So for this purpose, it's going to be a credit balance, and it's 1919. Okay. So we're going to put that in there. And the last figure we've got to put in, which is hopefully going to make everything balance, is the dividends. So we're going to say the directors' shareholders have taken dividends in the year, and they've taken dividends to the value of £20,000. So that's a debit balance. So we need to put that in there. Any dividends that are taken in the year, we need to put there. So I'm now going to click away out of this field, and hopefully this red box will disappear. Fingers crossed, everyone. It does. Look at that. It balances perfectly. So there we go. So obviously, before we do this exercise, we need to have our fully balanced TB. The accounts need to be finished. Everything needs to be balanced, ready for us to get the trial balance correct in order to put the figures in Taxfiler and in order for it to balance. In this case, it does. So everything's done. So I'm going to click on Save Changes here, just like that. And we're going to just move through the tabs now quickly. So I'm going to go to the Contents tab now. Now again, all these things you can see the tick boxes, you can either have them ticked or unticked, and these boxes here we can change. Again, type of company, I'm going to keep it a small company for now, and status, they're in draft at the moment, so I'm going to keep them in draft for this purpose. So then we've got all these options here. We can choose to include or not to include in the accounts. So we've got the cover sheet, it's included, and we can change that if we need to. We can click on edit. At the moment it says annual report and unaudited accounts, so we'll keep that as it is. We've got table of contents, so we've got that ticked. We've got company information, that's ticked. We've got the director's report, which we need to have in. Again, we can change it. So we've got the option to include the statement of director's responsibilities, and we've got the name of person signing director's report. Again, we'll come back to that. Statement of recognised gains and losses, in this case we haven't got it in there. Sorry, the accountant's report, again, don't have to have it in there. In this example, it's not going to be in there. And detailed profit and loss, again, I'm going to leave that unticked for the moment, but there's going to be a reason for that, which I will show you shortly. So again, I'm going to leave that for a second, the name of the director signing the balance sheet, but we'll come back to that. And lastly, on the options here, we've got mark draft accounts with watermark. Now, I always leave the watermark in until the client has approved the accounts. It's then, I think the reason for it, if you don't have the watermark in your draft accounts, it's very difficult then to tell the difference between the draft accounts and the final accounts. So I think if you leave the watermark on, it's going to have draft all over it. So there's going to be no confusion. If the client's sort of returning PDF copies of the accounts, there's going to be no confusion between the draft and the final. So I'm going to leave that tick on at the moment to keep the watermark on the draft accounts. Okay, so we're going to go through the notes. Now, all these notes that have clickable links, you'll see those, all the ones in blue, which produce a line. We can click in them and we can change the wording if we want to. And there's various other things we can do. I'm not going to obviously go through every single note to show you what you can do. We're just doing an example now. But all these different options here, you can click in and change if you need to. And then we've got policies on the next tab as well. We've got the basis of preparation, which is our sort of standard note. Again, that can be changed. And we've got the standard turnover note that we have in the accounts as well. Again, that can be changed. But we're going to keep things as they are for now. So we're then going to view the accounts. So if we click on view, okay, now you'll notice here, it says there are errors in these accounts. Please use the check and file tab to review the errors. And that's exactly what I wanted to happen, because that was my way of showing you that Taxfiler won't allow you to sort of finalize the accounts until certain things are completed. So that was entirely deliberate that I did that. And we'll see what needs to be done in a second. I'm just literally going to show you what the accounts do look like. So as you can see, we've got the watermark all over them. But we've got the company number, we've got the sort of statutory accounts in the normal format really. So Taxfiler has produced our accounts in the standard format. So we've got the company information sheet, we've got the director's report, which is obviously standard, and then we move on to the P&L, and then we've got the balance sheet. Okay, so pretty obviously the standard set of limited company accounts that we've got. Taxfiler has produced literally in seconds from that trial balance that I've just typed in. So what we're going to do now, as you can see, we've got the big red warning bar here telling us there's certain things we need to do. So we're going to click on check and file, and there we go. We've got some different things that we need to do. So Taxfiler has looked at what we've done so far, and it's given us a few warnings. It's saying to us, hey, there's a few things that we need to do before we can finalise these accounts. Okay, so the first thing it says is the share capital note is missing. You must include details of your current shares. So I just need to minimise that a second. So I've just had to minimise the chat box, guys, for a moment, because otherwise I can't see these fix buttons. So I'm not going to be able to see anything in the chat box for the time being. Okay, so the share capital note is missing. So if I click on fix, okay, there we go. So in this example, we've got ordinary shares. We've got the value per share is £1. So we need to put the number of shares in. So it's going to be 1. So I'll type in 1, tab across, and it says number of shares at end of period, which is also 1. We can save that. And that note has now disappeared. So it's a really, really good sort of safety check to make sure that you've included everything that should be included in the accounts before you go ahead and file them. So it's a really, really good feature. And we've got another error here, which is exactly what I was talking about earlier. There must be at least one current director entered in order for the accounts to be approved and filed. So that's why I didn't enter a director earlier, because I wanted this screen to come up just to show you that Taxfiler will look through your accounts and tell you what's gone wrong, if anything. So I'm going to click on that one to fix it. So we'll move back down the bottom and we'll put the director in now. So if I put Mr. F. Blogs, okay. Not too worried about the dates there. I'll put gender male. Okay, so we'll click on Save Changes. We'll go back into Check and File, and that note's now gone as well. So we've got 2 more notes here. These are in grey rather than the other colour we saw just now. So these are just sort of things that we perhaps don't have to get right or don't have to include in order for us to file the accounts or file the tax return, but it's better to get them fixed now. So it says there are tangible fixed assets for the year, but no fixed asset depreciation policy has been specified. So we're going to fix that. And what we're going to say is it's the fixtures and fittings that we had. So let's just make something up. Let's say 25% reducing balance. So that note will appear on the accounts now. So Taxfiler is saying to us, look, we need to have something in that note there for it to appear on the accounts correctly. So I've put that in there, 25% reducing balance. I'll save that, and that's disappeared as well. So our last warning, it is recommended that a detailed P&L account is included whenever accounts are to be submitted to HMRC. So if we want to do that, we don't have to do that, but if we want to do that, we can click on Fix. We're taken directly to that screen, and we can say Detailed Profit and Loss and put a tick there, Save Changes, and if we go back to Check and File, there we go. No more error message, so we've now got a perfect set of accounts. So we're now going to click on View. It says there are errors in these accounts, but that's because they're basically not signed now. So that's the only reason Taxfiler is saying that, because we need to get them signed. So we need to say the name of the person signing balance sheet. So, at this point, there's various things you can do. If we go back to View, you can download the accounts as normal accounts or abbreviated accounts. So if I just flick through that, the abbreviated accounts, which are the set that are sent to Companies House, as you can see there. So that's automatically generated a set of abbreviated accounts for you. Or you can go back to normal accounts. And you can download them in PDF format. So if I click on PDF, so these accounts now will be in PDF format. So you could now click on Download PDF because you've now got a set of draft accounts to send to your client. So if you click on Download PDF, it will save a copy of these accounts in draft format as a PDF file for you to send to your client to be approved. So let's say we've done that, and let's say the client's more than happy. He's come back to us and said, yep, more than happy with the accounts. So we can go to Check and File. We can tick on Mark as Final if we're happy. We'll tick on that. And he's approved the accounts, so we'll click on that as well. And now it's warning us that we need to enter the names here. So we've got name of person signing balance sheet, so it's Mr. Blogs, and that's automatically filled in the director's report as Mr. Blogs as well. Date approved, so we'll put today's date in, 6/2/17, 6/2/17, and then we can click on that again, tick on accounts approved, and there we go. So that's our accounts are now done. So you now see the draft watermark has gone because these accounts are now final. So again, we can choose PDF. So we can now download a PDF of a copy of the final accounts to send to the client as well, which is really handy. So we'll go back to Check and File. And at at this point, we can actually submit them to Companies House via Taxfiler. Now, you need to have what's called a presenter account with Companies House. I'm not going to go into too much detail on that now. Obviously, you don't have to file them through Taxfiler directly, but it's something you can do if you have a presenter account with Companies House. You could just click on Submit, and you can submit them to Companies House. But if not, you can go back to View, you can choose Abbreviated, and you can log into the Companies House site and just to basically do a carbon copy of what the figures are on here. You've got the abbreviated accounts here, so you just need to duplicate that onto the Companies House website. So we'll go back to check and file. So what we're going to do now, we're on half past 7 already, so we're going to whip through the CT600 very quickly. It says here, these accounts have not yet been attached to a company tax return for filing. So that is what we're going to do next. So if we click on Attach, so what this is going to do is create a new CT600 company tax return. So at the moment it says there are no tax returns with an accounting period beginning on 1/4/15. So we need to create that. So we double check the dates are correct, which they are. We've got the client reference there. We'll go on Create Tax Return. Okay, so it now says accounts have been attached to tax return. You can also update the amounts on the tax return if you wish. Okay, so we can just check through the accounts. As you can see, everything's been carried through for us. So we've got the dates, we've got the turnover, we've got the net profit, we've got the profits from non-trading loan relationships, that's the interest, and we've got the depreciation, it's automatically disallowed it, and we've got the various other costs there as well. So we can say update amounts to tax return. Okay, so we've got the company information there. So we're on the tax return now. We've got the company information there, the company type. Again, we can change that if we want to. We've got the address there, and we've got the various boxes that we need to complete if we're filling the CT600 out. Not normally a huge amount that you'd need here, so I'm going to leave them as they are for now. Now we've got the two red asterisks here, and it says XBRL accounts attached. So Taxfiler will automatically attach XBRL accounts to the CT600 to send to HMRC. We don't need to do anything else at this stage. And the computations, we're leaving the option as use XBRL computations generated by Taxfiler. So I'm going to leave those details as they are for now and click on Save Changes. Okay, so this is our tax return. So we've got the company information, we've got the trading profit sheet, and we've got the attachment, which is the XBRL account. So do you see, we've not effectively had to do anything to attach those accounts to the tax return. So if we go to computation, so there we go, we've got a lovely computation now all set out for us, how much tax we've got to pay, the tax calculation as well, all the normal stuff that we'd have on the corporation tax return calculation. If this is something you send to your client, again, you don't have to. It's not something I tend to do. I tend to tell my clients what the corporation tax is, but some do like it. So if you're in the habit of sending CT calculations to your client, you can just click on Download PDF and you can send that on to your client if you so wish. The next tab is the tax return. So this is the actual corporation tax return itself. Obviously, it's all been filled out with all our details. So we can just quickly move through the pages just to prove that it's all been filled out. Now, again, you can download this as a PDF. So you could download it, send it to your client for authorization. Now, if we click on Review and File at this stage, we've got one error in our tax return, which is good. So again, Taxfiler will look through what we've done. It will look through the tax return and it finds anything that we haven't done or anything that we need to do. In this case, add a declaration. So we'll click on that. Now we'll say we'll need to fill this in. Obviously, the name of the person making the declaration. So if we say Mr. F. Blogs, and the status, we'll say he's the director, and the date, which is 6th February 17, and we'll save that. Okay, so if we now go back to Review and File. Okay, HMRC validation checks have been completed successfully. So we can now go ahead and file the CT600 tax return. All the information's on there. The XBRL accounts are automatically attached, and we can now prepare that for filing. So that's now done. So I'm just going to go back to I'm going to put the chat log back on for 1 second. I'm going to go back to the home screen. just to sort of show you everything really. So if I click on returns, so there is our CT600 return. So at any time we can click on that and we can have a look at it, the computation, the tax return, etc., etc. If we click on accounts, there's our accounts there. Fred Bloggs Limited company accounts. Again, we can click on them to review them. But for this exercise, for this purpose, that is all done. So we've now got a set of perfectly balanced accounts that are ready to go to Companies House, and we've got a CT600 tax return all ready to go to HMRC. So I've gone through that, pretty slowly, I would say, and I've done that in about half an hour. So I think that shows, how really, really good, really, really useful Taxfiler is for quickly being able to produce company accounts and corporation tax returns. I'm not saying that you should all go ahead and go and do that. Obviously, it's something you only need to do if you are competent in doing it. But as far as making the job easy for you, I think Taxfiler does do that. It's very, very easy to do. As you can see, once you've done the trial balance and you've done the accounts, it's very, very easy to generate the CT600 and transfer the figures over. And you're all ready to file. So as I say, if you have a presenter account with Companies House, you can file directly from the software, from Taxfiler. If not, you can just log into the Companies House website and type all the details out, which won't take long. The abbreviated accounts are very, very easy to put in. But as far as the inland revenue is concerned, you can file that directly from within Taxfiler. So Taxfiler will send HMRC the corporation tax return and a copy of the accounts as well in XBRL format. So there's not anything extra you have to do there. So one final point I am going to make, again, a few people do sort of slip up on this, is when you're submitting corporation tax returns to HMRC, you have to bear in mind that CT600 corporation tax returns only run for a period of 12 months, okay? So if you've got a period longer than 12 months, for example, for your first set of accounts, it's quite common, for example, the first period to be 15 months, then you would need to file 2 CT600 returns, because CT600 returns can only be filed as a period of 12 months. So it's just something to remember. If you have a longer period than 12 months, you'll always need to file 2 returns to HMRC. Now, what you can do, in the sort of big return, if you like, you can have the 15 months figures, and in the smaller return, you can have that as a nil return. That's perfectly acceptable. And I know, lots of accountants, I do that as well for my clients. But the point is, you will still need to file 2 returns if you've got a period longer than 12 months. Okay, so I'm going to click back on the home screen. So for the demonstration, I'm going to leave that there. So I'm going to stop the recording now. So I hope that's helped. I'm going to come back to questions in a minute. I'm just going to finish off the recording first of all, and then we can sort of get that buttoned up and get that loaded up onto YouTube. So hope that was helpful. Hope you learnt a lot about sort of generating company accounts and certainly filing them through Taxfiler, which is really, really easy to do, as you'll see. So I'm going to stop the recording now and I'm going to turn the microphone off, but I'm going to concentrate on the questions now. So I will still be sat here for the next sort of 20 minutes or so. I'm just going to deal with the questions. So stay around, Katie, for a second and I'll answer your questions for you. But I'm going to stop the recording now. Hopefully that's helpful. And thanks very much for watching. Much appreciated. We'll, as I say, upload this onto the YouTube channel, hopefully in the morning, so you can get a bit of a refresher if you've missed anything or if you just want to watch it again. But for now, it's been great. Thanks very much, guys, and see you all soon.